Guten Morgen. Herzlich willkommen zum zweiten Tag der diesjährigen ASYL-INITIATIVEN-KONFERENZ. Mein Name ist Angela Müller, ich bin Geschäftsleiterin des Sächsischen Flüchtlingsrats e.V. und werde euch heute durch den Vormittag begleiten. Die ASYL-INITIATIVEN-KONFERENZ ist in diesem Jahr ein Kooperationsprojekt zwischen dem Kulturbüro Sachsen, dem postmigrantischen Netzwerk e.V., Weiterdenken Heinrich-Böll-Stiftung Sachsen und dem Sächsischen Flüchtlingsrat. Und ich möchte gleich von weg einen Dank an alle Organisatorinnen, Mitgestalterinnen und Mitstreiterinnen aussprechen, denn die aktuellen asylpolitischen Herausforderungen, vor denen wir stehen, diese zeigen, es ist wichtig, dass die diesjährige ASYL-INITIATIVEN-KONFERENZ stattfindet, auch wenn dies nur im digitalen Raum geschehen kann. Es ist wichtig, dass wir uns vernetzen, organisieren und dass wir handeln bzw. handlungsfähig bleiben. Unsere Podiumsdiskussion gestern Abend ging bereits der Frage nach, ob wir eigentlich bereits in einer postmigrantischen Gesellschaft leben und wenn ja, wie sich diese gestaltet. Die Diskutantinnen waren sich schnell einig, ja, wir leben in einer postmigrantischen Gesellschaft. Doch die aktuelle Realität entspricht dieser nicht, denn sie macht postmigrantische Gesellschaft nicht erlebbar. Es fehlt quasi an der praktischen Umsetzung. Das zeigt sich zum Beispiel am fehlenden Wahlrecht für Menschen ohne deutsche Staatsangehörigkeit, am täglich erfahrenen Alltagsrassismus oder an der fehlenden Diversität in gesellschaftlichen Narrativen. Trotz gemischter Bestandsaufnahme gab es auch konkrete Handlungsempfehlungen, wie wir postmigrantische Gesellschaft erlebbar machen. Zum Beispiel, indem wir zuhören lernen oder indem die weiße Mehrheitsgesellschaft einfach mal Platz macht. Die wirklich spannende Diskussion kann weiterhin auf dem YouTube-Kanal des Sächsischen Flüchtlingsrats nachgeschaut werden. Heute beschäftigen wir uns mit dem Thema Abschottung und Abschiebung, zwei Handlungsansätze, die die deutsche und europäische Asylpolitik bestimmen. In diesem Sommer haben wir leider einen Höhepunkt kollektiven staatlichen Versagens erlebt, als die Taliban die Macht in Afghanistan übernahmen. Es wurden Tausende von schutzsuchenden Menschen quasi sich selbst überlassen. Der Strom der Verzweiflung reißt bis heute nicht ab. Doch wir müssen den Blick gar nicht so weit schweifen lassen. In Sachsen erleben wir aktuell hautnah, wie Geflüchtete versuchen, europäische und innereuropäische Grenzen zu überqueren. Wir erfahren durch persönliche Erzählungen, Fotos und Videos, welcher Gewalt sie dabei ausgesetzt sind. Gleichzeitig erleben wir solidarische Netzwerke, die Spenden sammeln und verteilen, die Mahnwachen abhalten an den Grenzen oder die, wie wir alle hier, für eine humane Asylpolitik einstehen. Dass wir uns vernetzen, organisieren und handeln, ist also dringend weiterhin notwendig, trotz oder auch gerade wegen der globalen, europäischen und sächsischen Herausforderungen, vor denen wir aktuell stehen. Um Handeln geht es auch im Vortrag heute Vormittag. Bevor ich gleich unseren Gast näher vorstelle, möchte ich noch ein paar organisatorische Hinweise geben. Im Anschluss an den Vortrag heute Nachmittag finden zwei verschiedene Workshops statt. Im ersten Workshop Bring Back Our Neighbors geht es um die praktische Solidarität im Falle von Abschiebungen von Nachbarn. Im zweiten Workshop Politisch aktiv sein und bleiben geht es um die Frage, wie wir trotz der widrigen politischen Umstände aktiv bleiben können, ohne dabei auszubrennen. Falls noch nicht geschehen, können sich auch spontan interessierte Menschen noch für die Workshops anmelden. Bitte schreibt bis 12 Uhr eine E-Mail an asyl-ini@sfrev.de. Das Orga-Team hat das Mailpostfach im Blick. Der folgende Vortrag wird auf Englisch stattfinden. Es besteht das Angebot einer Simultanübersetzung auf Deutsch. Dafür ist ein zweiter YouTube-Stream eingerichtet und der Link hierzu sollte im YouTube-Chat zu finden sein. Ebenso gibt es im YouTube-Chat ein Pad. Auf diesem könnt ihr bereits jetzt oder im Laufe des Vortrags eure Fragen notieren, damit die anschließend in der Diskussionsrunde auch zur Sprache kommen können. So, now it's time to switch to English. A warm welcome to Jelka Zorn, Professor of Social Work at Ljubljana University. Thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing your knowledge, your research, and your personal experience in the field of migration. Jelka Zorn is researcher in the field of migration and asylum for more than 20 years now, including the issue of erasure. One of her main theses is that with the emergence of new nation states out of the eroding Yugoslavia, the decline of human rights began. As many other people, Yakazon sees the right of freedom of movement as a general human right. And practicing this idea, she has been criminalized herself too. However, criminalization and also breaking laws may be one of the possible opportunities to rethink our own position. In one of her latest articles, she deals with this issue. In today's lecture, she will introduce a political approach towards humanitarian acts at the EU's external border. So welcome again, Yakazorn. You have the stage now.
Thank you, Angela, for this introduction. Good morning to everybody. So yes, I will continue introducing myself because you mentioned that I come from the struggle of the erased. I find this very important for me personally, but also in general, the struggle of the erased in Slovenia was, yes, very important. The erasure was a systematic violation of human rights that happened in Slovenia after Slovenia seceded from Yugoslavia, after the breakup of Yugoslavia. The erasure means that people went without citizenship and without any rights that are attached to the statuses, meaning they lost, not they couldn't get, but they lost the right to live in Slovenia, the right to medical care, the right to housing, the right to social assistance, everything. I'm sharing this screen. This is one of the actions of the erased in front of the parliament from 2003. But this is also a story of success. But at that time already, when Slovenia became independent state, seceded from Yugoslavia, it also started to join EU, European Union. And in this sense, I feel it also started to become a borderland of Europe. Because Slovenia acts as a borderland of Europe because of the geographical position, but also in the way police and bureaucracy works. Okay, then this is a long story. I really make it very, very, very short. Very short for this introduction. It was also mentioned I am professor of social work, which is social work is always is a question: is social work part of the problem or part of the solution? Because sometimes we feel that autonomous social work or social work in NGOs or academic social work. Later on, I will refer to direct social work. Differ from social work in state institutions, because again, to mention borders, all public institutions reproduce borders from within. So it depends if you have a status or not, you can gain some right or not. So we could see this as reproduction of borders from within. Also, Angela mentioned I was criminalized in 2017 for preventing pushback of two men, and this I will stop share now. So yeah, and this fact, this forces me to think deeply on the issues of risk, border control, because I see border control as not only direct violence, but also structural violence, social work, category of crime and impunity, the issue of impunity connected to category of crime, smuggling, domination of the police discourse in our everyday thinking, and what effects this brings on us. So I was criminalized with the same laws as smugglers. And the question, of course, is, does this make me a smuggler? This is one question. And the second is, how is this possible? It's possible because in the law, the profit or the material benefit, which is actually the hallmark of smuggling, is not necessary ingredient of this alleged crime. What is the how international law defines this? United Nations Protocol against smuggling of migrants on land, sea, and in the air from 2000 oblige the states to persecute smuggling only when there is material benefit included. But EU law guidance, it's called facilitator package from 2002, is rather ambiguous on this. It's not clear if material benefit is a necessary ingredient for some act to be recognized as crime or not. And so in Croatia, in Slovenia, Greece, other countries, Italy, it's happening that people are accused with the same laws as smugglers, but there was no material benefit included at all. I looked at because this facilitator package got many critics, and I checked on European Commission now if there is some news, some renewal going on, and they wrote that there is, I will share this screen, just a second. Sorry for this waiting. I'm not very good with. So what they say, what the European Commission says now is that there is some renewal regarding this issue, and it says, quote, humanitarian activity mandated by the law should not be criminalized. But again, here I see there is ambiguity because it says humanitarian activity mandated by the law. Because if we do spontaneous actions or autonomous solidarity actions, I can hardly see how these are mandated by the law. So actually, of course, yes, I'm not a smuggler, obviously, but as a researcher, I have to ask further questions on this issue. Who is a smuggler then? Who defines this? And in what way? Because thinking on this issue, smuggling is not only illegal service migrants are looking for and paying for when they need to cross the border, but around this activity, a dominant police discourse in the forum of police war against organized crime has been built. So is this police discourse against organized crime that I want to discuss now? And there are two questions that I would like to pose and answer. So this police discourse against organized crime and smugglers, what this discourse conceals and what this discourse creates. So first, what it conceals. So this war against smugglers, it conceals the responsibility of the EU for structural and direct violence on the borders. And this includes, of course, deaths on our borders, people dying. For many years, people are dying on our borders. On average, 6 persons per day dies on the European Union borders. Then what else it conceals? it conceals this basic antagonism of border control itself. And which antagonism is this? On one hand, there is a right to asylum, and the right to asylum also contains decriminalization of refugee arrivals, meaning that when people come and ask for asylum, they come in illegalized way, but they are not penalized for this. So it's decriminalization of refugee arrivals, and this is the part of UN Convention of Refugees and UN Convention Against Organized Crime, protocol against smuggling of migrants on land, sea, and air. Both these UN conventions are clear on this, and it's also common knowledge when people arrive and ask for asylum, they are not penalized for illegal crossing of borders. So this is the right to asylum on the one hand. On the other hand of this antagonism is border control, and border control is there to stop people and stop the same people and push them back or whatever happens at the border. So we can say that asylum is intertwined with border control. And this is a rather schizophrenic situation because the police cannot do both, implement the right to international protection and protect borders from the arrival of refugees or migrants. I want to share screen again to show you one man. This is from the newspaper, and I would like to explain this case because it's very interesting, also very important, but also very interesting for this to illustrate this schizophrenic situation or this antagonism. So this man, he came to Slovenia, was pushed back from Slovenia to Croatia, was pushed back to Bosnia, but he complained to High Court, Slovenian High Court, that he could not apply for asylum, that he was pushed back. And he actually won the case. But still, despite he won the case, so the High Court decided what is already decided, that he has the right to apply for asylum and that he should not be pushed back. He could not come to Slovenia, and journalists asked the head of the police office, and they said, of course, he can apply for asylum at any police station in Slovenia he wants. But this is, of course, a very cynical answer because he could not enter Slovenia. Now he managed to. That's this photo in front of the Slovenian parliament. This is a very important decision that he won at the High Court. But actually, this is a right that every person has, the right to claim asylum. So to manage this antagonism, that everyone can come and ask for asylum and that the border control would not be needed then, to manage this antagonism, police wage war against smugglers. And also they invented the term abuse of asylum system. I'm sure you all know this this term because it has been going on for at least 20 or 30 years that police is using this abuse of asylum system. I found one quote from the police from their press conference a few years ago, which really illustrates this precisely. And the police officer said at this press conference, she said, now I'm quoting, "Not only journalists not only journalists and NGOs advise foreigners to claim asylum, but especially smugglers. They abuse the asylum procedure for their smuggling business. Abuse of asylum system is the most common way to enter the state. So in this way, border control, right to asylum antagonism is concealed, and refugees and smugglers are seen as a problem. So going to our second question, what is this course on war against organized crime creates? I think it creates a myth of the evil smuggler. I want to explain this because when I was, as I said, when I was criminalized and with the same rules as smugglers, and I also read quite a lot of anthropological researchers on smugglers, but not from the perspective of police, but more from the perspective of smugglers themselves. And what they are basically saying is the smugglers is not a homogeneous group. It's not black and white situation, smugglers as perpetrators, refugees as victims. But these roles can be mixed. Refugees sometimes smuggle to help also their fellow comrades or to help themselves. Also, there are different kinds of smugglers. Some never see refugees and just take money. Some are among refugees and advise and so on. But also there is again, situation is not black and white, because when we see how externalization of European Union border control works, we see how normal services can become smuggling services when the law changes, and the law changes because of the EU border control. For example, this was the case of Niger, when after the fall of Gaddafi in Libya, the border control, EU border control moved more south to Niger, and suddenly the law changes so that before normal transportation services through Sahara became illegalized, became all these pickups who were before driving migrants suddenly turned these drivers into smugglers. Similarly, in Serbia in 2015, when the police humanitarian corridors started, many taxi drivers were driving people to the border, and at one point they were recognized as smugglers, and 200 taxis were confiscated. Also, to illustrate this, that situation is not so black and white, and different people are and that roles are mixed. There is one quite famous, very interesting person. He's called Amir Heydari. He's activist, refugee, and smuggler at the same time. Interview with him is published in this book, Illegal Traveler, by Shahram Korsravi. Korsravi interviewed Heydari while he was still in prison in Sweden, and Amir Heydari first helped. He's refugee himself. He was born to Kurdish parents in Iran. First, he was sending Kurds to Sweden for free. He was selling carpets, but then he charged because this was his only job that he did. But he was saying he never concealed what he was doing. He was always open about his work. He said that he's his own travel agency and work with people whose visas are denied. He helped about 40,000 people, mostly Kurds, to escape to Sweden. And he served 14 years sentence in prison just in Sweden, but also in other states. And he said in prison he continues his work. He published a booklet with some important information for refugees, how to behave in airport or talking to asylum officers or police officers and so on. Yes, so, but the problem, of course, is telling you all this, it feels as if I would somehow defend smugglers, but this is not the point. Then I want to say that the other side of the coin, of the myth of the evil smuggler, is the police represented as the rescuer from the hands of these evil smugglers. And now the question is yes, how the police is represented as rescuer, and also the second part of the question is, where does the police rescue people to? And I want to present two examples to illustrate this. One is, both are from Slovenian newspapers. One is from 1941. This is the beginning of Second World War in Slovenia. And the second one is from last year. So in this newspaper, Slovenets, from 1941, Second World War, Jewish refugees were fleeing Austria through Slovenia. And now the whole article actually is about describing ambush for smugglers. It's like it reads like some criminal story, how police was really clever to catch these smugglers, and how these refugees were frightened what will happen to them, and they were afraid that the police will kill them or something. So yes, in this article, the police is presented as good guys, that they discovered these really bad smugglers who were taking money from these refugees who were fleeing Nazi persecution, actually. And the article concludes that these Jewish refugees were sent back to Austria, and probably they would be further sent to Poland, because the journalist says, because this is the what is happening now with Jewish people. And so this is the article, and the article from 2020 is in a way similar. There are refugees who were traveling through Slovenia and were discovered by the police. I want to share screen to show you. And they were in a lorry covered by clay. So you can see here they are covered by clay. How they were, and then they were rescued by the police, and there were because the situation was such that they could suffocate. They could be suffocated because it was not enough air, because they were covered by clay in this lorry, and they were also escaping. I think they were from Afghanistan. And again, this article is similar to the other one because it's very much focused on how police rescue the people, and also some police officers were interviewed and they were telling about their emotions, how it was to rescue people. There were children and women among them, and it's actually a heartbreaking article. But only I looked a few newspapers on this same rescue action, and only one article, it says that after the refugees, after the migrants were questioned about this, what happened, they were sent back. So in both cases that I presented, in both cases, police rescue people in pushback. This is what they do, but still in the media they are presented as rescuers. Also, when seeing and reading this, I also asked myself, why has the smuggler put these people in clay? It's really a dangerous situation. But still, why? Is it because he didn't care, only the profit matters? Is it because it's more and more difficult to cross border, and then smugglers are inventing new ways which are more and more dangerous? So these are the questions. But again, each time when I am researching on this, I feel very bad, because I feel as if I'm defending smugglers, although I know all the bad and horrible stories that people are telling what happened to them because of the smugglers, because the smugglers were so violent and abusive and greedy. But still, but going back to this issue of border control, I want to address something concerning pushbacks directly. In the last couple of years, pushbacks became an important public topic. Border Violence Monitoring Network published 1,500 pages long testimonies of pushbacks. It involves 12,000 people. They did almost 900 testimonies of violence on the Balkan route from Greece to Bulgaria, Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia. But pushbacks actually are not a new practice. They are very much connected to development of the border control. But what is new in recent years is name pushback, which gives visibility. And also around this illegal police practice, many reports has been written. Also, it was the topic in the EU Parliament. Also, members of the European Parliament came to the border, talked to people that were pushed back themselves. So really what is happening is this visibility and this raising awareness that what is happening, what is police doing is illegal. And this, I find this quite an achievement in this common anti-racist struggle. But what is also new about these pushbacks is that violence that accompany pushbacks, this violence is systemic and is visible. It seems as that police does not want to conceal violence. On the contrary, they deliberately leave marks on people's bodies, marks of violence. They mark people's bodies by police violence as a strategy of deterrence for others, so that not more migrants would come. Also, I'm quite surprised how governments are not really trying to hide either pushbacks nor visible. They are denying, but not really hiding. Not really hiding. So this, I think, is what's new about pushbacks, this visibility of violence. But this, on the other hand, also many people responded to these horrors of pushbacks, and they did a lot of solidarity work and activist, voluntary work, different kinds of work to support refugees and migrants living and traveling and finding new home. I want to turn now directly to the topic of solidarity and criminalization of solidarity. I want to tell two cases of criminalization of solidarity to illustrate how actually this criminalization works. One case is from Slovenia and one case is from Croatia. So the first case is the case of Ana Lija. She's a social worker, and she wrote about this criminalization in her bachelor thesis. She and two other comrades, they went to the border between Slovenia and Croatia on the Slovenian side one night in the winter to meet three guys from Syria because they wanted to apply for asylum in Slovenia, and they wanted to monitor this procedure. They want to make sure that they would not be pushed back, that they could apply for asylum. And they went to the woods, but they met police first, and this police, they called criminal police. They were arrested. They brought them to the police station. They also brought these guys to the police station. The pushback at the end was prevented. These guys could apply for asylum, but the first place why they were actually left in Slovenia was that they would be witnesses at the court if there would be a criminal procedure. And then they got a letter from the public prosecutor that they are endangering the security of EU and Slovenia. And we were really afraid that a criminal procedure would be introduced, but this was still pre-criminal procedure. It lasted over 1.5 years or maybe more, that they had this pressure on them, what will happen. Because for social workers, it's not so good to be in a criminal procedure, because already this fact disqualify you from the criteria to get a job in social services, because the criteria is that you must not be involved in investigative criminal procedure. But at the end, the judge dropped this case, and nothing happened. They were free. And the other case is similar. Is from Are You Serious? It happened that the family Hussein, maybe you heard of this case because it's very well known and very tragic. They went from Serbia to Croatia, and in Croatia they were pushed back and advised by the police officer to just follow the track. This is how they were pushed back, and they were doing this. They walked near the train tracks, and immediately after they start to walk, Madina Husseini, 7-year-old girl was hit by the train and died. Later on, this family, but the family was still pushed back. Later on, the family tried again to enter Croatia and ask for asylum. And in this case, the group Are You Serious really wanted to make sure that they would not be again pushed back after already losing a child. And a volunteer, Dragan Umicevic, he went there to the police station directly to this town where they were coming to. He didn't even saw the family, and the family was then detained for 2 months, and Dragan Umicevic was arrested and accused and persecuted, and at the end he was found guilty for the penalty for 8,000 euros. So these are the 2 examples I want to show. In both cases are horrible, of course, but inspiring at the same time, because their persecution was also the opportunity to speak up, to raise awareness of what's going on in the sense of criminalizing of solidarity, but also raising of awareness of people dying on our borders, of raising awareness of pushbacks, violence, in what conditions people live, all this. There are more inspiring cases as these 2. I didn't want to say that the other cases are more inspiring, but there are also other cases which are the same inspiring as this one, and are more famous, like Sara Mardini, Pia Klim, Carola Rackete, and they're all on YouTube. And I think this is a great, it's a good opportunity to raise awareness and on what's going on. So I did some interviews for my research. I did some interviews with people who are involved in solidarity work. These people are interviewed. They have not been criminalized. I can share screen because I translated them and I wrote them down. My question was why they are doing this solidarity work, because obviously it's also very risky. And one interviewee said, witnessing such a degree of dehumanization, violence, and brutality moved me into action. And what people really need is that they pass borders. But this person, she was very much involved in other kinds of solidarity work with people on the move in Bosnia and Serbia. And so she saw direct consequences of pushbacks and in what conditions people live. The other person said, we drove one friend to Italy from Slovenia because the bus driver didn't take him on the bus, despite the fact that he had a ticket. What could we do in this moment? We couldn't just leave him at the bus station. After all he's been through. This was a rather spontaneous reaction. It was not planned or something that they would help this man, that they would drive him. It was very spontaneous action. But again, these two people knew this man from before. They knew the conditions that he lived in. They knew how many pushbacks he suffered, how much violence he suffered. And that's why they decided in one moment like this. And the third interview said to me, to help people on the move, I see as a duty. For me, this is a description of the profession of social work. It's not the question of legality. If I do this as social worker, then my actions are legitimate, because this is how I was trained to be a social worker. It is in compliance with the definition of social work. If I don't do this, I cannot call myself a social worker. So she connected it to her profession. And me, myself, also, when I was criminalized, and later on I wrote in my diary, in my ethnographic diary, because the police, many criminal police approached me, like 8 of them, and we had these two boys, these 2 young men in our car from Afghanistan, and they didn't have visa, of course, because they wanted to apply for asylum. And then this criminal police officer asked me what's going on, and then I had to explain myself somehow, and I said the same. I explained myself with my profession, and I said, I'm a social worker and I just do my job. You are the one who is violent and push people back to Serbia. People cannot apply for asylum. If the situation is not like this, there would be no need for us to drive these young men. So some of us in these interviews and in my journal, my ethnographic diary, we, but also in our discussions, because we discussed a lot about the risk, about the possibility of criminalization, but also why we are doing this at all. We connected this help with the term direct social work. This term direct social work, it was coined during the Occupy movement 2011, where people were gathering in squares and streets, and people were also very critical to social work and social workers, because they felt it became a more and more bureaucratic work. But we social workers and people would like to see that we work together, that we are on the same side, not that bureaucratic work is something that is between me as a social worker and another person. And for this, from these demands, they coined this term direct social work. And so we were also, because we are also social workers, and we were thinking to use term that is positive and strong, and above all, that is totally disconnected from the police discourse, because at the end of the day, this is the most important, that we disconnect ourselves from the police discourse, which is a very dominant discourse and way of thinking and talking about things. Yes, so we are moving towards the conclusion. So for the conclusion, I would like to answer the question, what are the effects of criminalization of activists, volunteers, migrants? I think the effects are the creation of hostile environment for everybody, destroying the accountability of civil society, destroying the right of free speech, free association, and also together with this creation of hostile environment, destroying the possibility for spontaneous reactions. And this is especially true for people who live directly on the border. It's difficult to act spontaneously because you never know how this will end. And actually it's such situation, it means that everybody is a little bit turning into a border guards. And now the concluding sentence. I want to conclude by answering the question, what is the difference between smuggling and solidarity action? Because, as I said at the beginning, the law does not necessarily see the difference between those two. And obviously, the smuggling is a symptom of border control. It's very much connected to border control. It's an effect of violent borders, and it reproduces more violence. Whereas on the other hand, solidarity action means at least two things, means helping individual people, people on the move, but also it means developing communities of resistance, developing mutual action. And in this sense, I see solidarity action also as a protest against violent borders. Here I finished. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I think we are open for discussion and questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Jelka, for this really, I think, impressive and also interesting insight in your research. And I think, yeah, it covers a really urgent issue at the moment, especially also in Saxony regarding people coming from Poland and Belarus. So, yeah, and also thank you for emphasizing state responsibility concerning the issue of criminalization of migrants. I think that's a very important topic. And yeah, and I think it's also important to discuss the meaning of social work in the context of supporting migrants, or as we call it in Germany, Fluchthilfe or Flüchtlingshilfe. Yeah, I don't think that the discussion on this issue is already going on. So let's see, I think that now we have the chance to discuss some questions from the audience, and the first question which was raised is, if somebody would smuggle refugees as a solidary act without taking money, on which legal basis can this person be criminalized, and how could this person prove that the smuggling was a non-profit action?
But as I showed in these cases, actually it seems that a persecutor, but I don't know for judge, is not interested at all if this, they are interested, but the law doesn't say it must, the material benefit is a necessary ingredient. So actually what police and some public persecutors are after is not only smugglers, they are also after autonomous solidarity work, solidarity actions, autonomous solidarity actions. So if you see, if you on YouTube, you can see the talks of, for example, Sara Mardini. She is a refugee herself. Maybe she's a very well-known person. She is a refugee herself, and she also helped refugees in Greece, but she was just giving blankets, and she is charged with 4 different crimes, and she was detained for 100 days, and she doesn't know what for exactly. So it doesn't seem that police and persecutors are and judges are only want to persecute smugglers, the smugglers we have in mind that do this for money and so on.
Yeah, so they probably want to criminalize all people who support refugees or migrants in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the next question is more on the current discussion, because it asked when and how did the framing from, in English it's probably refugee supporters, or in German you say Fluchthelfer, switch to smuggler, and do you think that it came from media or politicians or public discussions or maybe new laws, or where does this switch or transfer came from?
Yes, also what I wanted to say before, but it's also, it covers this question is, for example, if you watch the Pia Klim talk, the same, she and her comrades, they saved life of many thousand people. So they were saving lives directly from the Mediterranean Sea. And she's accused of helping illegal migrants, because I think both smugglers and autonomous solidarity activists are seen as a pull factor for migration from the point of view of the persecutor or these ministers of internal affairs, or these control apparatus. They are both seen as a pull factor. This is one thing. And the second is that they are helping illegal migrants, because in this system, it's how police sees, police divides. There are asylum seekers and there are illegal migrants, although of course these are the same persons. But the formulation is aiding illegal migrants and being a pull factor, because she was saving lives from the sea, or in the case of Sara Mardini, because she was waiting with a blanket on the shore, on the Greece shore. Now they are a pull factor, and migrants came because of this. I mean, this is, of course, it's totally unlogical, but this is the argumentation, and this is how it's framed in this police logic.
So mainly it's not, so probably it's mainly the public discussion or the narrative which changes the public opinion or meaning on the help and the support for refugees. So further on, it would be, do you think that there is another word for smuggling, or a better word, because it's just about helping? And do you think that we need maybe a new word for supporting refugees, which is more positive?
Yeah, I think everyone who was criminalized, the first thing was to think for another word, not to accept the police argumentation, because it's so dominant and so deep, not only smuggling, but also other words. Yes, sometimes we use either solidarity work or direct social work, because yes, it's help. It's within the definition of social work, how you have to actually understand structurally the positions, the different power positions, and you see in what kind of positions are people on the move in, and of course is within the understanding of historical and colonial power relations. And from this on, you see why people are coming, and also you ask on the rights of people in general, and then you support people on the move, the right to escape, the right to asylum, blah blah blah, all this. And yes, this is within social work. If you look at the definition of social work, what does it mean, how to support people, how to connect to them, what is a mutual action, it is in this frame. Just because what the social work became today, we had to add this direct, because this is really direct social work. It's not is to distinguish to sometimes too bureaucratic social work.
Yeah, maybe the next question also stresses the meaning of social work, because at the end you said that direct social work or supporting people on the move is a form, or maybe a form of protest. And the person asks that she thinks, or he thinks that the repressive laws forces direct social works to act in secret. And how can one call it a protest if it's happening in secret? Or is there any other form of publicity needed to call it protest?
Yes, yes, we can also call it civil disobedience. And either we talk about direct social work or civil disobedience or protest or whatever. It is awareness that we are breaking the laws and the laws are unjust. And also it's important to talk about this, to raise awareness. It's done secretly so that people can pass, otherwise they will not pass. It's done or that they could ask for asylum. It can be also done very openly, like a monitoring, so that people can apply for asylum. But yes, somehow it must be discussed. Otherwise it's not a protest. Yes, I agree totally. The protest is only when it is public. Otherwise, if it's only our secret action, it's only help. It's not a protest.
Okay, so you distinguish between action in secret and public action. Okay, thank you very much. And maybe another question, would you say that maybe in general in Europe that there is still a right to apply for asylum? It is still in place?
That there is this right? It doesn't seem that is, it's a double. It exists, of course, it exists in documents, and formally it exists. The right to asylum formally exists, but in reality it doesn't exist, because obviously, as people cannot apply. It's just unbelievable situation. So this could be also some authors. One author, Eugenio Cusumano, addressed this, not exactly this, but similar situation, addressed this as a organized hypocrisy, because on one hand you have this, but on the other, the what's going on in reality is different. So the right to asylum has been destroyed by border control in general, but by violent pushbacks, totally.
Okay. Wow, it's quite a negative conclusion.
Yes.
But yeah, if you have reality in mind, I think it's quite necessary. And as far as I see now, there are no further questions from the audience left, but maybe last but not least, do you have any recommendations for actions or any other recommendations for people supporting people on the move to go on with their work and to support humanitarian actions at all?
Mm-hmm. Yes, maybe about the risk. It's good to think what we are prepared or not prepared. It's not like we have to be prepared on everything. Like here we are, and now we are prepared on everything. I would rather say thinking it over and see where we are in this moment, and to do it what it feels right for us in this moment. And maybe in some other moment with some other experience, something else would come as a right action. So also to to question oneself about this. It's not like not to act out of guilt because we are white, privileged, blah blah blah. Not to act out of this.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for being here with us today, for your advice, for the interesting insights in your research. And I hope that we'll meet again, maybe next year or on any other occasion. And yeah, thank you very much also for your activism. That's so
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for organizing this. Thank you.
And I'm also very glad that Ines and Sarah have been with us today, and because they managed the translation from English to Germany. Thank you very much as well. And if you want, you can turn on your screen.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon and a good workshop later on.
Very much.
Bye.
Und damit wechsle ich zurück ins Deutsche. Danke an alle Zuschauerinnen und Zuhörerinnen, die heute Vormittag mit dabei waren. Danke auch an die Rückfragen an Jelka Sorn. Wir bedanken uns bei der Rosa-Luxemburg-Stiftung, der UNO-Flüchtlingshilfe, der Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung, der Damos-Stiftung und dem Sächsischen Sozialministerium für die finanzielle Unterstützung. Ohne Finanzen wäre auch die Konferenz in diesem Jahr nicht möglich gewesen. Und genau, wir verabschieden uns jetzt in eine etwas längere Mittagspause. Um 13 Uhr geht es weiter mit den Workshops. Wenn spontan Interessierte sich noch anmelden wollen für die Workshops, dann kann das bis 12 Uhr erfolgen. Dazu könnt ihr eine E-Mail an asyl-ini@sfrev.de schreiben. Beim ersten Workshop geht es heute zum Thema Bring Back Our Neighbors um solidarische Nachbarschaftshilfe bei Abschiebungen. Und im zweiten Workshop geht es um politischen Aktivismus und wie man nachhaltig aktiv bleiben kann. Meldet euch gerne noch an, wenn ihr Lust habt. Genau, und alle, die sich bereits angemeldet haben, haben einen entsprechenden Link für den zugehörigen Raum bei Big Blue Button erhalten. Und dann sehen wir uns alle heute um 13 Uhr im jeweiligen Workshop. Ich hoffe, ihr habt eine gute Zeit bis dahin und schön, dass ihr heute Vormittag dabei wart.